Have you ever noticed how we're always trying to define things, to put them in boxes? This is a man, this is a woman, this is how relationships work. And yet, the moment we think we've got it all figured out, the universe has a way of laughing at our certainty. It's rather like trying to catch water with a net, isn't it? The more tightly you grasp, the more quickly it slips away. Now, when we consider this fascinating idea that men kneel before such a woman, what exactly are we talking about? Is it mere romantic subjugation, a power dynamic, or is there something far more profound happening beneath the surface of such a gesture? You see, in Eastern thought, particularly in Taoism, there's this marvelous understanding of the interplay between what they call yin and yang energies. Yang, the masculine principle, is associated with action, with doing, with penetrating, with light. And yin, the feminine principle, is associated with being, with receiving, with darkness, with depth. But here's the fascinating thing. Neither one is superior to the other. They are rather dancing partners in the cosmic ballet. When a man kneels before a woman, what's really happening? On the surface, it appears to be an act of submission, doesn't it? But I want to suggest something rather different. Perhaps what's happening is a recognition, a profound recognition of the mystery that the feminine represents. Consider for a moment what happens when you stand at the edge of the ocean. There you are, on solid ground, looking out at this vast expanse of water that seems to go on forever. It's tremendous, it's mysterious, it's powerful beyond measure, and yet it's not aggressive. The ocean doesn't need to prove its power, it simply is powerful. In much the same way, the feminine principle doesn't assert power, it embodies power. Now, the interesting thing about the masculine principle, and I'm not talking merely about men as physical beings, but about the yang energy that exists in all things, is that it is constantly doing. It's building, creating, analyzing, solving problems. It's terribly busy, isn't it? Always with some goal in mind, some destination to reach. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's quite marvelous in its own way. But what happens when this energy encounters true feminine presence? Not the socially constructed idea of femininity, all those silly rules about how to dress or speak or behave, but the profound feminine principle that exists at the heart of the cosmos. Well, something quite extraordinary happens. The masculine principle recognizes something it cannot do, cannot achieve, cannot conquer. It encounters mystery. And that, you see, is when kneeling becomes not an act of submission, but an act of wisdom. It's rather like the way a tree bends in a great wind. Is the tree submitting to the wind? Well, yes and no. The tree is acknowledging a force that cannot be resisted directly. The tree, in its wisdom, knows that to stand rigid against such a force would mean breaking. So it bends, it flows, it dances with the wind. In much the same way, when the masculine principle encounters the true feminine principle, it doesn't surrender in defeat, it surrenders in recognition. Recognition of what? Of the profound truth that doing must eventually give way to being, that achievement must eventually bow to presence, that knowledge must eventually kneel before mystery. Now, this is all very poetic, isn't it? But what does it mean in practical terms? What kind of woman inspires this response? Well, let me suggest that it's not about a type of woman at all. It's not about physical beauty or charm or any of those temporary qualities that our culture seems so obsessed with. Rather, it's about a quality of presence, a woman who is fully embodied in her own being, who doesn't need to prove anything, who doesn't need to achieve in the masculine sense. Such a woman carries a profound power. It's rather like a deep mountain lake. You look at the surface and it's perfectly still, perfectly reflective. But you just know that it goes down and down and down, fathoms deep. You could throw a stone into it and watch the ripples, but the depth remains undisturbed. That's the quality we're talking about. And men, or more precisely, The masculine energy within each of us recognizes this quality instantly. It doesn't need to be told, it doesn't need to be convinced, it knows. And in that knowing comes a natural response of reverence. Not because the feminine is better than the masculine, but because it is its complement, its completion, its other half in the great dance of existence. You know, it's quite interesting how our culture has so terribly confused these energies. We've associated masculinity with strength and femininity with weakness, but this is a profound misunderstanding. The feminine principle isn't weak at all, it's incredibly powerful. It's just that its power expresses itself differently. It's not the power of doing, it's the power of being, not the power of conquering, the power of creating. Not the power of analysis, the power of integration. Consider the womb. What more powerful symbol could there be? Within that dark, mysterious space, life itself is created. Not by effort, not by striving, but by allowing, by receiving, by being. And yet our culture, in its strange wisdom, has decided that this incredible power is somehow less valuable than the power to, say, build a skyscraper or win a war. Isn't that extraordinary? But you see, the man who kneels, truly kneels before such a woman, is not diminished by the act. Quite the contrary. He is expanded, because in that moment of reverence, he connects with something beyond himself, beyond his doing, beyond his achieving. He connects with the great mystery from which all life springs. It's rather like what happens in meditation, when we sit and simply allow ourselves to be. Without trying to get anywhere or achieve anything, we connect with something vast and profound within ourselves. The thinking mind, which is very yang in its nature, bows before the vast spaciousness of pure awareness. And in that bowing, that surrender, comes not weakness, but tremendous power and peace. This is what happens when a man kneels before such a woman. It is not that he becomes less, it is that he recognizes something more, something beyond the endless striving of the ego, beyond the constant doing of the masculine principle when it's out of balance. And, you know, this recognition isn't limited to relationships between men and women. It's much more universal than that. It's about the recognition of these principles wherever they appear. A scientist may spend years analyzing and dissecting and theorizing all very yang activities, but there comes a moment of reverence, of awe, before the sheer mystery of existence. That's the feminine principle making itself known. Or consider an artist working diligently at their craft, practicing, perfecting, mastering technique, all very masculine in its energy. But then comes the moment of inspiration, that mysterious, ungraspable quality that transforms mere technique into art. Where does it come from? No one knows. It simply arrives, like grace, and the wise artist kneels before it, receives it with gratitude rather than trying to control it. That's what we're really talking about when we speak of men kneeling before such a woman. It's about the yang principle, acknowledging the yin principle, the doer acknowledging being, the known acknowledging mystery. But here's where it gets really interesting. These principles aren't fixed. They're fluid, constantly shifting and changing. Each of us, regardless of our biological sex, contains both principles. Sometimes we're more in our masculine energy, doing, achieving, building. Sometimes we're more in our feminine energy, being, receiving, nurturing. The problem comes when we get stuck in one mode, when we can't flow between these energies as circumstances require. A person, man or woman, who can only do but never be, who can only give but never receive, who can only speak but never listen. Such a person is out of balance, cut off from half of their own nature. And this, I think, is the profound wisdom hidden in our phrase, "Men kneel before such a woman." It's not about men subordinating themselves to women. It's about the masculine principle acknowledging the feminine principle both in the other and, crucially, in oneself. For a man to kneel before such a woman is, in a very real sense, for him to kneel before the feminine aspect of his own nature, to acknowledge that he, too, needs to sometimes set aside doing for being, to acknowledge that he, too, is not just a conqueror but also a creator, not just a thinker but also a feeler, not just a speaker but also a listener. And for a woman to receive such reverence is for her to acknowledge the power of her feminine nature, not as something less than the masculine, but as something equally profound, equally necessary, equally divine. You see, we're not talking about a power struggle here. We're talking about a power dance. Yin needs yang as much as yang needs yin. The receptive needs the active as much as the active needs the receptive. They are not opposed, they are complementary, and when they recognize each other, honor each other, dance with each other, that's when magic happens. That's when we experience wholeness. Now, this wholeness is not static. It's not about finding some perfect balance and then freezing there. It's dynamic, always shifting, always flowing. Sometimes the masculine energy leads, sometimes the feminine. Like the changing of seasons, like the cycles of the moon, like the rhythm of breath in and out, in and out. And this brings us to a profound truth, that the act of kneeling is not permanent. It's a moment, a recognition, a honoring, and then the dance continues. The man rises, the woman bows, he receives, she gives, back and forth, around and around, in the endless, beautiful dance of life. So when we speak of men kneeling before such a woman, we're really speaking of a moment of perfect recognition, a moment when the masculine principle says to the feminine, I see you, I honor you, I recognize that I am incomplete without you. And in that recognition comes not weakness, not submission, but wholeness and strength. Because you see, the truly strong man, or more precisely, the person fully embodied in their masculine energy, is not afraid to kneel. Just as the truly powerful woman, the person fully embodied in their feminine energy, is not afraid to stand tall. It is our integration of these energies, our ability to dance between them, that makes us whole. And in the end, perhaps that's what we're all seeking. Not dominance over others, not even dominance over ourselves, but the ability to flow, to dance, to play with all aspects of our nature, to be both strong and soft, both active and receptive, both yang and yin, to recognize, in other words, that we are not just one thing, we are many things, we contain multitudes, and in embracing the full spectrum of our being, we find not the limitation we fear, but the freedom we seek. So the next time you encounter that phrase, men kneel before such a woman, perhaps you'll see it differently, not as a statement about power or subjugation, but as a recognition of the beautiful, necessary dance between the masculine and feminine principles that exists within each of us and in the universe at large. And perhaps you'll take a moment to honor both principles in yourself, to allow yourself to both do and be, to both speak and listen, to both lead and follow in the great dance of life. For in the end, it is not about kneeling or standing, it is about dancing, dancing with ourselves, dancing with each other, dancing with the universe itself, and in that dance, finding the joy, the wholeness, the peace that we seek. And if you've found value in this exploration today, in this little journey we've taken together through the dance of masculine and feminine energies, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, to leave a like on this video, and perhaps to share in the comments below. What aspect of your own nature, your yang or your yin, do you find most challenging to embrace? For it's often in our challenges that we find our greatest opportunities for growth. Until next time, remember, the universe is not against you, nor is it for you. It is you, and you are it. So dance accordingly.